Yeah, live.
All right. Um, Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm Jacqui Irwin. I represent the 42nd Assembly District, which includes the Ventura County cities of Simi, Moore Park, Thousand Oaks, and the portion of Camarillo that was the site of Thursday's ICE activity. Thank you to all of you for joining our virtual town hall. We had hundreds of constituents that called my office to voice their deep concerns, fears, and frustration with the ongoing activity. My heart
Assemblymember Irwin, you are muted.
All right. I don't know how that happened.
We lost you at my heart.
Thank you. My heart goes out to our farm workers, their families and friends who are all waiting diligently for the status of their loved ones. And I want to extend my condolences to the family of Jaime Alanis Garcia, one of the farm workers who is still in critical condition. As one of our most critical agricultural counties in the nation, our farm workers are an important part of our community's fabric, and current events have impacted every corner of our county, and people are demanding transparency and answers. As state officials, we're here to shed a light on the state's role while dealing with federal law enforcement. We're grateful to have a partner in Julia Brownlee, who has been in constant communication with us as Congress has oversight authority on federal agencies. The Congresswoman has been on the ground in the thick of it. She wanted to join us today, but had scheduling conflicts. She has demanded that ICE and DHS provide immediate and accurate information on these activities and the status of the detainees. We wish her luck as she returns to Washington this week to continue the good fight. Thank you, Julia. On the state side with us this morning are some elected officials to address the ongoing federal immigration enforcement that has infected so many. We are very fortunate this morning to have Rob Bonta here. He has made room in his very busy schedule to join us. Senator Monique Limon, who obviously also represents this area, and Ventura County Supervisor Lopez. And then we're grateful also that our community leader, Genevieve Flores Haro, is here to join us. I'd also would like to acknowledge Steve Bennett, who has joined us. So I would like to begin with our special guest this morning, a former colleague of mine in the state assembly, Mr. Rob Bonta. Mr. Bonta serves as our 34th Attorney General of the state of California and will be discussing his work as the head of California Department of Justice.
Thank you, Assemblymember, and grateful to be here. Good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to be here with Ms. Flores Haro and Supervisor Lopez, and of course, Assemblymember Irwin and Madam Pro Tem Senator Monique Limon. Wonderful to be here with former colleagues, current colleagues, and I want to say it's important that we come together in convenings like this. And I want to thank you for being here. I want to say to everyone, it's not unrecognized that you are tuning in on a Saturday morning, and the fight for our democracy, justice, the rule of law, it doesn't take the weekends off, and it's inspiring to see that you are not either. I want to start by first expressing my condolences for the family and friends of Jaime Alanis Garcia, who's in critical condition, and to all those who were injured or traumatized during the ICE raids in Ventura County on Thursday. The terror and the chaos we witnessed at those sites is deeply troubling, and sadly, that's part of the Trump administration strategy in Ventura County, Los Angeles, and throughout our state. The administration is using federal immigration agents as a tool to instill fear and to instill division. Agents are wearing masks. They're driving unmarked vehicles. They're dressing in plain clothes and refusing to identify themselves when asked, making it difficult to distinguish them from criminals or from anyone else. They're stopping Californians very often not because they have evidence of any wrongdoing, but based on racial profiling. Let's be clear, there's no reason for agents to obscure their faces or to refuse to identify themselves when asked. There's no reason to bring in military trucks and equipment and deploy the National Guard to carry out immigration arrests or to use rubber bullets and tear gas. These tactics are dangerous. They're damaging community trust in law enforcement. They're disrupting Californians' daily lives and impeding public safety. The president is waging war on American-born children, on immigrants with humanitarian parole, those seeking asylum, and hardworking members of our community who just want to provide for their families, who give back to our economy and strengthen our businesses. Trump's creating a culture of fear and mistrust where parents are afraid to go to work or send their children to school, where people are afraid to go to the doctor or access public services. He's pushing forward policies that would upend California's agricultural industry and increase grocery prices in direct contradiction to his promise to end inflation on day one. The truth is, the federal government has the right to conduct federal immigration enforcement, but they don't have carte blanche. They still have to follow the law and abide by the Constitution. I want you to know my office is monitoring the immigration raids and ICE activity. We won't be silent. We won't back down. We have and we will continue to support the lawsuit filed by the ACLU and other immigrant rights groups challenging some of these tactics, these unlawful tactics. And as of last night, a court issued a temporary restraining order blocking the federal government from engaging in unconstitutional and unlawful stops and detentions. We filed a lawsuit challenging the president's unlawful federalization of 4,000 California National Guard troops and separately deploying an additional 700 Marines in response to protests in LA. Action taken without approval from the governor and despite local law enforcement confirming they had the situation under control. We were swiftly granted a temporary restraining order blocking the deployment and directing the administration to return control of the Guard to Governor Newsom. However, that order was put on pause by the Ninth Circuit Court while it reviews the Trump administration's appeal. You can be sure we're continuing to make our case as the lawsuit makes its way through the court system, and we remain confident that the law is on our side. We've sued the administration for trying to impose immigration enforcement conditions on federal funding our state is owed for improving our roads, keeping our planes in the air, preparing for emergencies, and protecting against terrorist attacks, projects that have nothing to do with immigration. Soon after we filed our lawsuit, a court granted our preliminary injunction blocking these unlawful conditions. And we sued Trump hours after he tried to unilaterally rewrite the U.S. Constitution and end birthright citizenship on his first day in office. While the Supreme Court issued a disappointing decision on the nationwide injunction last month, the injunction blocking the executive order and upholding birthright citizenship stands until 30 days from their decision. And we're moving in that period expeditiously to ensure there's a decision in the lower courts before those 30 days run out. It's important to understand that the Supreme Court decision was about the scope of the nationwide injunction, not the merits of our case to protect birthright citizenship. Our case is continuing through the system, and we have full confidence that we will prevail on the issue of defending birthright citizenship. As I said earlier, California can't block federal agencies from conducting immigration enforcement, and we generally can't regulate or restrict ICE activities in public areas. However, California's law, SB 54, is very clear that except in certain narrow circumstances, state and local enforcement cannot use taxpayer money to enforce federal immigration law. The federal government is free to do their job if they do it lawfully, but they can't force us, state and local law enforcement agencies and departments, to do their job for them. We're monitoring ICE raids and immigration enforcement to ensure they comply with the law. If you or anyone you know witness potential violations of the law, please report it to us at immigration@doj.ca.gov. Immigration@doj.ca.gov. Our team has also published an extensive list of resources and guidance around the rights and the protections afforded to immigrants in our state. I encourage everyone to take a look, share them with anyone who might benefit from them. You can find them on our website at oag.ca.gov/resources, oag.ca.gov/resources. They're in English, they're in Spanish, and several other languages. Finally, California DOJ has been reviewing and has put out 4 reports on what we see happening in immigration detention centers operating in our state. This federal administration has been volatile, and while we don't know exactly what's to come in the next few years, we do know that we're better off when we have facts and when we have data. As AG, it's my job to fight for those who are vulnerable, pushed to the side, taken advantage of, and hurt, to protect, defend, and enforce our laws and our collective rights, to pursue justice for all, no matter where they're from, how they look, or what language they speak. As AG, it's my job to fight for those who are vulnerable, pushed to the side, hurt, and protect and defend our laws and rights. And we will do that. That includes California's vibrant and diverse immigrant community. Our state is home to nearly 11 million immigrants, including my own mom, Cynthia Bonta, my favorite immigrant. 27% of our population are immigrants, more than any other state in the nation. And that's a point of pride. People who are our neighbors, our friends, our loved ones, who bring in new ideas and innovations and perspectives, who drive our workforce and our economy, who advance our state and move us forward. It's no coincidence that California is the most diverse state in the nation and also the 4th largest economy in the world. So immigrants make California and our nation great. So you can be sure that I'll always fight for our immigrant community, including taking the Trump administration to court when they break the law or violate the Constitution. The next 4 years are going to be challenging, and there's no doubt about it. We need to be clear-eyed and sober about that, but we ought not be hopeless, because we are not helpless. We aren't powerless, not as long as we stand together, use our power, our collective power, as long as we're united in the fight for democracy, for freedom, for justice, for all. Thank you all again for being here this morning. We need you to stay engaged, stay enraged at the abuses of this administration. We can never accept the unacceptable or normalize what is so abnormal. We need you to continue to show up, speak out, demand better, and do that peacefully. Please know you aren't alone. I'm by your side, and I have your back, and I'm grateful that you're here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Attorney General. And we are going to have some time for questions after. You'll be able to stay until we get to questions? Great.
Yeah.
We are also going to hear from 3 other speakers. First, our wonderful Senator Limon, my longtime friend and colleague. She represents the 21st Senate District, which includes Santa Barbara, parts of Ventura, and San Luis Obispo. Monique, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much, Assemblymember Irwin, for convening us. Thank you so much to our Attorney General, Bonta, for being here, not just today, but every single time. Our state looks to you to give us guidance in how we can uphold the laws of this state and of this country. I also want to just thank every single person that is on this that you'll be hearing from, Supervisor Lopez, and of course, Genevieve Flores Haro from MyCop, and many, many organizations who have been involved over the last few, really years, everybody. This work has been happening for years and for decades. I think the work of making sure that we have safe spaces for all of our community, from farm workers, that we think about the contributions of every single person that lives in our community, including our immigrant community, and how we uphold our laws is something that so many of us do every single day. And in this moment in time, certainly we are feeling how much more important it is. I know that what has happened in our community has been very difficult, and I want to first acknowledge how much our community feels the fear, how it feels terrorized in terms of what is happening. This is an issue that deeply impacts us in so many ways. In addition to following very closely what has happened and how it has impacted so many farm workers and immigrant members of our community, we also know that this is impacting U.S. citizens. We have a California Faculty Association member who has been detained, and we also do not know where that individual is. And these are folks who have been very key to making sure that our community keeps moving in the direction that we want, in the direction that's important, which means that we all work together and find a place. I think that it's important for folks to know that as a state legislature, both in the Assembly and in the Senate, we have championed different efforts, both on the legal side, but also on the fiscal side, to be able to prepare us for this moment, knowing that there could be different perspectives in how we interpret our laws, and certainly want to make sure we uphold our laws. And I know that in January, we moved forward $50 million for litigation fund that has been the funds that certainly have been helping all of our state ensure that we were prepared for this moment. And that was something that our state has done. We are thankful to Attorney General Rob Bonta for the over 24 lawsuits that have been filed and injunctions, of course, where we believe that there is a mismatch or federal overreach in terms of our laws. This work that we're doing at the state level, it goes past just funding. We have a number of bills. Certainly the Latino caucus is looking, and API caucuses are looking at different bills that we're moving through the process to make sure that, again, that there is some appropriate and legal boundaries between schools and immigration enforcement, certain places that have been particularly safe zones for a lot of members of our community. So we want to thank you all for being here. We are outraged at what has happened, but we are also individuals who are deeply concerned, who are committed to upholding our laws while also caring for a community, for also speaking out against the injustice, against the terror. I am the daughter of immigrant parents. My grandfather was a bracero, and he was a farm worker. He worked on the fields here in Oxnard. So this is deeply personal to me. When I see what is happening, I think of all of the folks who have come to this country to put food on the table, that are part of our communities, that are part of our economy. And I certainly know that there's deep impact on a moral, personal, community, and also economic level in terms of what is happening. So thank you all for being here today. We stand ready and committed to work together to make sure that our community is moving forward, and that we are keeping all of our community safe from the terror that we're living, and to ask for a stop to what is happening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Limon. At a local level, leadership is more important than ever, and Supervisor Lopez has been on the ground and was on the ground on Thursday at the forefront of representing our workers and their families. Supervisor Lopez represents the 5th Supervisorial District. VNA, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Assemblymember Irwin. I really appreciate you convening this town hall. Thursday was certainly a very difficult, overwhelming, and emotional day for so many families, for so many of us who are connected to our community here in Ventura County. This immigration raid the aftermath of this immigration raid is certainly very difficult, as we continue to hear stories from families and people who were either inside the farm site or as family members who are relaying information about their loved ones who were detained. On Thursday, I visited the site with Congresswoman Brownlee, and we got the insight on the work of our Ventura County Fire and EMS, who were there to ensure proper medical care was provided to demonstrators following the use of tear gas from the National Guard, but to also ensure that the people being held and detained inside the facility had the care they needed, which included the transportation and response to Jaime Alanis Garcia, who fell from 30 feet up. I was on the site later that night with the community as the federal operation concluded and federal officials left. And yesterday, I spent the majority of the day at the farm entrance alongside staff from MyCop, the United Farm Workers, and La Hermandad, who were providing information to families. I talked with and heard from parents, brothers, sisters, spouses, and children of those who were detained. They were showing up looking for their loved ones, looking for their personal belongings and access to their vehicles. Later yesterday, on Friday, a search and rescue effort occurred at Glass House to ensure people were accounted for. A thorough search was completed, searching all 8 houses on site and contingent spaces, and wrapped up around 9:45 last night. No one else was found. The public, these families have questions about how this operation was conducted. What are the rights that immigrants have, and as demonstrators and as citizens who were also detained? But there are also deeper concerns about the treatment of people during the operation and now as they are in detention. Questions are coming up about the aftermath, including children who have been left behind without parents. And I recognize the work we have ahead of us as we learn more about the needs of families impacted by this immigration raid and what may be coming in weeks. I really appreciate the communication and efforts of organizations who have been on the ground as we continue to identify opportunities for collaboration and, more than anything, how we can support families that have been impacted. I encourage people to contact 211, call 211 to locate assistance, or go online. There has been a dedicated page, 211now.com, for resources for immigrants, including access to clothing and personal items, childcare, mental health counseling, utility payment assistance, food assistance, housing support, and emergency shelter and healthcare. Our work is not a one-day response, but a moving finish line as we continue to respond to the situations our community faces. I am with you and our immigrant and indigenous communities, and I will continue to work on behalf of you to explore, and I continue to explore the establishment of a legal defense fund to support our immigrant community in Ventura County. And I share in the emotion that Senator Limon expressed, as I myself am an immigrant, the daughter of a farm worker, a family of immigrants here in the United States, in Ventura County. This touches close to home, and I am just disheartened by what is happening. I am hurting with our entire community, and I want to thank you, Assemblymember Irwin, for bringing us together, Attorney General Bonta, and our entire state delegation for your work on behalf of our community and those who are hurting now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Supervisor Lopez. We are so grateful that you are there to bridge the gap between our farm worker community and public safety and government. And finally, again, we're grateful to have Genevieve Flores Haro here to share the perspective of farm workers who are affected and families that have shared their heart-wrenching stories as everybody awaits to hear from their loved ones. Genevieve is a longtime community leader in the Mixteco community and Ventura County at large. Welcome, Genevieve.
Thank you, Assemblymember Irwin, and it's really grateful to be here. Just for folks who might not be familiar with my COP, it's the Mixteco Indígena Community Organizing Project, and our mission is to support, organize, and empower the Indigenous migrant community here in California Central Coast. And on July 10th, we actually had a staff meeting, and that's when we received word about the raid at Glass House Farms in Camarillo. And the moment that we got the call, everything stopped. We've actually been engaged in rapid response efforts since January, and these efforts include Know Your Rights workshops, verifying ICE sightings, and then connecting people to immigration attorneys. We have staff as well that support that work. And we are also part of the 805 Immigrant Coalition. But despite this work, nothing could prepare us for what we saw on that day. And as soon as we got the word, we deployed teams from across our organization, our community organizing team, our immigration advocates, our wellness department, social services, interpreters. And for many of us, this was personal because at Glass House in particular, a lot of those workers are Indigenous. They come from the Zapotec community, and many of our staff have family members who work there. And so throughout that day, a lot of our team sat together, holding collective breaths and just wondering if their own loved ones would make it home. And so when we arrived at Glass House, we realized that there were two fronts because ICE had closed off the street. They'd closed off Laguna. And so on one end, you had Laguna and Wood, and on the other side, you had Laguna and Las Posas. And at the beginning of it, it was just ICE agents, about 5 to 6, wearing full tactical gear. Obviously, their faces were covered by masks. They themselves had body cameras. They were wearing bulletproof vests and they had assault rifles. So I started off on the Laguna and Woodside. And then we were told to go over to the Laguna Las Posas side because there were 2 vans of farm workers that they were trying to move. And so while recording these vans that were transporting farm workers, ICE agents deployed tear gas at protesters. These protesters were peaceful. And they deployed this tear gas to try to get the protesters to move. And then the vans sped away with these farm workers. I myself was hit by tear gas, as were several others. And that was difficult, right? It was unprovoked. And so that happened. And then on the other side, there were 2 large buses full of farm workers. And so that's when everything kind of started to unravel. There was tear gas, flashbangs, and then throughout the day, just more and more folks came to try to support what was happening, to try to keep the farm workers from being taken away. And the crowd, it was students, it was community members, it was the elderly, it was people in wheelchairs, and it was folks coming with food and with water. And there's this narrative out there right now that it was an aggressive crowd. And I just want to be very clear, like these were very peaceful people. There were no weapons, there wasn't any attacks on any side. But what we did see was an overwhelming and disproportionate show of force. And then at one point, the National Guard was called in. As I mentioned, I was tear gassed. My staff was shot at by rubber bullets. As was already mentioned, a professor was arrested. U.S. citizens were detained. And then at one point, they were taking farm workers out from back roads to avoid the crowds. And again, we were not violent. We were tending towards each other. We were protecting each other, and we were showing up in love and grief and in outrage. And around 11 o'clock, that's when the ICE agents finally cleared out. But the damage was done already. The families were torn apart. People were hurt. And what one reporter had mentioned, that this is the largest immigration enforcement that our region has seen in years. And I think to Attorney General Bonta's point, this isn't about immigration. This is about power. This is about cruelty. This is about who gets to feel safe in our community and who doesn't get to feel safe in our community. And I just also want to be very clear this, we're not powerless. We can continue to show up for each other. We can continue to speak out about injustice. We can continue to support our neighbors. And what that looks like for us in the Central Coast, it means offering a ride. It could, means interpreting or translating documents, or it just simply means showing up and refusing to look away. And we need to start doing that because the people that were taken away, like those are our neighbors. Those are the folks that are picking our food. They are the farm workers that feed us all, and they are part of what makes the Central Coast the Central Coast. And the stories that we're hearing from these families, it's pretty devastating. It's pretty apocalyptic. Our phones were going off nonstop yesterday, of just people like not knowing what to do, not knowing where to go, because the first 24 hours after your loved one is taken, they're not even in the system yet. And so a lot of it is, if yeah, again, they're not even in the system yet. And the other thing that was happening is that folks were also hiding in the farmhouse. And so what we're also trying to help folks navigate is your person could be detained, or your person could be one of those that were, maybe hiding in the ceiling or hiding underground, because we were getting reports of people, in different parts of Glass House. And that's to the supervisor's point about the search and rescue operation happening, because up until yesterday afternoon, we were still getting calls about like, my loved one is in this house or in this part in this area. And so yeah, there's still a lot of aftermath work that we're having to do. Even this morning, still getting calls of, okay, how do I get my loved one's belongings? Glass House itself is not the employer of these farm workers. It's 2 other entities that directly employs the farm workers. And so we're still working with community members on how to get their checks, how to get like any personal belongings, how to even get their cars out of the area. So there's still a lot of work that we're having to do. And at this point in time. If you yourself are asking, what can I do? Again, what I can offer is know what your rights are, know what your neighbors' rights are, join local efforts to monitor ICE activity to help protect your neighbors, support other groups that are doing this work, like My Cop, like 805 on DocuFund, and use your voice, because silence helps nobody. And we have to keep each other safe. We have to fight for one another. And no matter how hard things get, we have to keep showing up. And just also thank you for taking part of your Saturday morning to be here and to hear what's happening on the ground here in our community. So thank you.
Genevieve, thank you so much for the description of what our neighbors are all going through. You have always been the person that has given a voice to the voiceless, and we really do appreciate you. For everybody that's on, there are a lot of questions in the Q&A. Please continue to put them in. We'll try to get through as many as we can. We have our staff trying to compile the questions that are being asked. But I think the first question that we're hearing, and maybe this is for Attorney General Bonta or for Genevieve, are now that 24 hours have passed, are we able to track down these farm workers? Do we know where the professor is? What is the law as far as transparency?
But I can start. This is always a area of some level of lack of transparency. Of sometimes it's a black box, which is very anxiety producing and fear creating. There should be responsiveness from the federal government. There should be, and every individual who is detained should be able to be connected with their loved ones and an attorney. And but the beginning of the original or initial hours and days can be very tumultuous, and that's in large part what the ACLU's lawsuit was about, that we supported with an amicus brief, as multiple Democratic attorneys general did, to make sure that there is prompt identification of where an individual is located, where they're going, their movements, their access to an attorney, their ability to contact their loved ones. So that connection immediately when someone is detained, and connecting to their attorney and their family and loved ones is an area that is not what it should be and needs improvement. And so these moments right now, right after a raid where folks are detained, are the most anxiety producing. And this lies at the feet of the federal government. They have these folks in their custody. They know where they are. They can communicate it and make it clear. They can provide, and they should provide, and are lawfully required to provide contact with certain individuals, including attorneys for a detainee. So I know that the lack of answers and certainty is disheartening and disturbing, rightfully so. This needs to change, and the federal government can and must do better. But the lawsuits, the pressure, this court order requiring better access, lawful access, constitutional access, and compliance to an attorney is how we create the change that we need. So we should keep calling out, just keep telling our stories, keep speaking truth and seeking truth. And where there are areas, and unfortunately there are many, where the federal government falls down with respect to its compliance with the Constitution and the law, we need to both call it out and take action to change it.
And then thank you for that. And Genevieve, what are you seeing on the ground? Have we been able to connect farm workers to their families, connect other people that were detained to their families? Have you heard that happening already?
Yeah, I think the unfortunate reality is that it's the volume of it, because we're dealing with 200 farm workers that were taken in a single day. and the infrastructure that we have on the Central Coast is already been impacted by previous raids. And there's just not enough attorneys that do removal defense work. And so what we're having to do internally between my cop, between 805 Immigrant, 805 Undocufund, VC Defensa, is we're just doing intakes at this point, and we're working with other immigrant removal defense. That's my dog. She has a button. She wants to go outside. What we're having to do is compile our intake lists, just to have a starting point, right? What I did hear from some of my staff is that they are getting calls from their family members. And what we're having people do is when your family member calls you, make sure you get their A number. But there is this unfortunate thing that's happening is they're calling and the call only lasts a second and they're not able to get that A number and they don't know when the relative's going to call them back again. And again, that's on to the Attorney General's point, that's on the federal government side where their system is also failing as well. Like even just on a logistics point, they're not even able to stay on the line long enough to get the number to their family member.
I can't imagine how difficult that is. We have a lot of questions on the role of local law enforcement. I know Attorney General Bonta, you went into that a little. Maybe you could expand on that specific. I'm not sure if you know exactly what Thursday looked like, but also from a local perspective, maybe Supervisor Lopez would be interested in adding on.
Sure. I'll start high level with the fact that in California since 2017, almost a decade now, we've had in place a law called SB 54. It's our pro public safety law, which says that our valuable public safety resources, our sheriffs and our police departments, should use their not unlimited resources to tackle crime, to tackle murders and robberies and rapes and human trafficking and fentanyl trafficking and hate crimes and organized retail crime, and not use those valuable resources for civil immigration enforcement, especially when there's whole departments and agencies that do that at the federal government level. So very unremarkable that we're going to use our resources to focus on tackling crime and not on immigration enforcement. And so there are some exceptions when it comes to some serious and violent crimes, and there's individuals who are in custody, for example, in jail. There can be a transfer that is coordinated with ICE. But generally, the rule is focus on, sheriffs and police focus on crime, not on immigration enforcement. And so you shouldn't generally be seeing involvement of police or sheriff in any ICE raid, immigration enforcement action. There have been different reports about what happened on Thursday, so we're still assessing and trying to get to the bottom of what happened. We have a report that there was local law enforcement nearby that was doing traffic control, not immigration enforcement, but traffic control. That's one data point. There will be others as the full picture emerges, and we will consider all of it appropriately and fairly. There can also be times when, and this happened in LA, when there are some federal officials, including potentially ICE agents, whose public safety is at risk, and then it becomes just a public safety issue, and law enforcement can respond to protect the public safety of a person who happens to be an immigration enforcement official. They're not going to assist with immigration enforcement or an ICE raid. They're protecting the public safety of that individual whose safety is at risk. So there's some nuance to it, but generally, the local law enforcement should not be participating in any immigration enforcement action. Now, there's been some sheriffs and others who have had big talk on this, who have tried to wage the culture wars and try to rally up the base and virtue signal on this. But it's been talk, and talk is lawful. Action's not. If there were action behind that talk, that there would be a violation of SB 54. then we would take action to prohibit any violation of SB 54. We've been clear about that. Before Trump took office, we sent out key guidance on what SB 54 requires, what it prohibits local law enforcement from doing. So we expect our law enforcement to enforce the law fairly and follow the law. And should they not, when it comes to SB 54, we're prepared to take action. We've been prepared since day one. So, and I know that there are different perspectives and different sets of information. Send it to us. If you have information that you think there's any violation, we're interested in data, we're interested in evidence, we're interested in facts, and we will apply the law to those facts, and take appropriate steps if necessary. But that's kind of the overview of what local law enforcement should be doing, what they're prohibited from doing under the legal regime that exists in California.
And I appreciate that very much. I will say that that our sheriff has been very adamantly saying that he is supporting or upholding SB 54. He is not one of those sheriffs that is talking to the base. He has talked to a number of immigrant groups, and they have assured us that they are not doing immigration enforcement. So, if people have, it's good to know that if there are folks that have experienced something else, they can always report to the Attorney General. I don't know if you have anything to add, Supervisor?
Yeah, the Attorney General covered it in terms of what is happening here in person through our sheriff. And the response on Thursday was at the request of the FBI. And as he mentioned, it was traffic control and crowd control. There were a lot of people, there were a lot of vehicles, and it was important to ensure that people were safe. So that was how that unfolded. The sheriff did not respond earlier, did not appear on scene, just given to ensure that line was defined of no collaboration with this immigration raid.
And the sheriff has again, their job is to keep the community safe, and he has stated that many times. I'm not sure if anybody has the answer to this, but we have another question about what was the warrant that allowed the agents to enter the property. Was it a FBI warrant? Was it a ICE warrant? Are there any answers to that, or would you happen to have an answer, Attorney General? Know the answer?
I don't have an answer on the specifics around the warrant. I'm aware that there was a warrant, that they presented a warrant to access the property. If it's private property, you need a judicial warrant, and so that's what it should have been. I haven't seen the actual warrant, but and let me just be clear: a judicial warrant is signed by a judge, by a court, and as opposed to an administrative warrant that is signed in a federal agency like ICE that doesn't have the same power and authority that a judicial warrant has. So I have assumed, because of the entry into a private property location, that it was a appropriate and proper judicial warrant, which is what it would need to be for there to be accessed by the federal agents. But I have not seen it.
Okay, and then this is for the Attorney General. What is your opinion on Friday's ruling halting patrols? What is your thought on whether it's likely to be upheld?
Let me first say it's a good ruling. It's an important ruling. It's a strong ruling. It is a ruling that that granted a temporary restraining order. So the court ordered the federal government to follow certain procedures that would get it in compliance with the law when it comes to two areas. One area was we haven't talked about as much today, but it's with respect to the conditions of detention, access to an attorney when in detention, and that is important because, as we just talked about, the period of time right after there are folks taken into detention is chaotic, and the court made it clear that you need to take affirmative steps to provide access to an attorney. That was area number one. Area number two was around the tactics and approaches that ICE has been taking when it comes to their stops and their detentions. They have argued that race, that language, for example, speaking Spanish or speaking English with an accent, that the presence in a certain location, like a bus stop or a car wash establishment, or a job that you have, like being a worker at a car wash, can all be considered as part of what they call the totality of the circumstances. That is a real legal term to determine who to stop and detain and create reasonable suspicion, which is the standard needed to stop someone and detain them and then potentially arrest them. The court said that's not true. Any one of those factors or any of them in combination does not create particularized reasonable suspicion to stop and detain someone for suspicion of violating a federal immigration law. So it's clear, and that's important. And I think a lot of people have seen and been concerned about racial profiling in its different forms, taking in consideration race, language, place of, just presence in a certain place or the type of job that you have. And the court said that sweeps in huge swaths of communities and neighborhoods of people who have done nothing wrong, and there's no suspicion that they've done anything wrong, and you can't rely on those factors. So it's important. It's an important ruling. It applies in the 7 counties in the Central District of California. That includes Ventura County. So the ruling in LA last night applies in your county, in Ventura County. That's important. It puts guardrails on what ICE can do. So like any case, this is a trial level order, a federal district court, which is the first court. This order is subject to appeal. And the federal administration has been very aggressive in its request for appeal. My anticipation is that they might seek a request of the appellate court, which is here in California, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, ask that court to stay or temporarily stop the implementation of this order. So they might do that. And then we'll see what the Ninth Circuit says. But it is not true that trial courts grant these requests for constitutional compliance and appellate courts reverse them. Not true. It depends on the issue, depends on the case. The Supreme Court has affirmed requests that we have made, and we expect them, and that organizations like the ACLU have made, and we expect them to do the same in the future. We don't expect to win every case, but I believe that this was a strong court order, well reasoned, well cited to legal authority that guides the thinking here, and always hard to predict what will happen, but I think there's a strong chance that it remains in place as it should, despite any efforts by the federal administration to appeal, to help guide and create only lawful activity when it comes to ICE immigration enforcement.
Right. Well, thank you. And that is somewhat of a relief to hear. So we are about at the end of our time. I was hoping that each of you could do any final words, especially on how we can support these at-risk members of our community, maybe starting with Genevieve, Supervisor Lopez, Senator, and then Attorney General.
Yeah, I'll try to be really quick. Yeah, I think the main thing is to stay informed. Make sure that you know what's going on in your community. I can drop it in the chat. Ways to keep yourself plugged in. I think maybe just one thing to keep in mind, just because I saw the question come up a couple times about the farm, and a lot of things. This is something that folks don't really realize in agriculture. We have these big companies, but oftentimes they are not the direct employer of the farm workers. So as was the case with Glass House was the company, but there were 2 smaller companies that contracted with the farm workers. And so I'll leave that on the table for folks to think about. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Assemblymember, and I will just echo Genevieve's comments. Just stay plugged in, follow the organizations, 805 UndocuFund, 805 Immigrant Coalition, follow your representatives, those who you see here today and those who weren't able to join us today. But I am just pleased and appreciate the work that everyone is doing as volunteers, as leaders who are here as we're sharing this space. As we continue to work on behalf of our community. Just stay informed, and thank you.
And I will add, I think you've heard just the number of organizations in our communities along the Central Coast. I also want to recognize that while we've talked a lot about what happened in Camarillo, it also happened in Carpinteria. We're seeing this happen along the Central Coast. My advice to all is do what you can where you can. We all have limitations and ability to do it. You've gotten a series of suggestions, recommendations, not just in terms of how to access information from your elected and government leaders, but also from the nonprofit community. This is indeed a difficult time. I think the other thing that's important to recognize is we are all working together. There is a reason you see different levels of government here together on a call. We are trying to ensure that we also are working with our partners. And so being in touch with all of our offices is, I think, important, and make sure you're staying up to date, but know that everyone can do their little piece in their own little way. And that includes really looking at how we support our community from the ground up, and also in every other direction. Gracias a todos los que están aquí hoy oyendo este mensaje. Aquí estamos nosotros para apoyarlos y para trabajar para asegurar que nuestra comunidad esté segura. Gracias.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. I really appreciate the opportunity. I'm very gratified by the many questions that are being asked in the chat here, and that level of engagement, participation, involvement, interest is absolutely necessary for a thriving democracy. So let me just say thank you for that. Democracies thrive on participation and engagement. They die in the dark and with neglect and apathy. So thank you for being here. Thank you for your questions. I will not be able to answer every single question, but I do want to refer you to our website where many of them are answered. We have a set of resources about the current state of the law, the rights that immigrants have, answers questions that are being asked in the chat, like where can ICE agents go without a judicial warrant? Where do they need a judicial warrant to go? I'll just tell you quickly, they can go to public places where anyone else in the public can go, like a lobby or a parking lot. They can't go to places where not any member of the public can go. Like in a school, they can't go to a classroom. They can't go to a library without a judicial warrant. And again, it's a judicial warrant signed by a judge, not a warrant that they generate from their own office. So those are two highlights to keep in mind. I want to end with this, the 3 C's. Crowds, or courts first. Courts, crowds, and courage. Courts, crowds, and courage, the 3 C's. They're very important right now, and I hope that you can, as you think about your actions, your participation in our democracy, our future, that you think about how you'll be involved. The courts are really important to stop unlawful conduct from this federal administration. We've gone to court 30 times so far in less than 30 weeks in the Trump administration's term so far. We've sued more than once a week. We have more lawsuits lined up for next week. We want to sue never, because that means that the Trump administration is following the law and complying with the Constitution. But we will unapologetically and resolutely sue every time the Trump administration breaks the law, violates the Constitution, and hurts California. We are immovable on that. The way to stop getting sued is simple. Stop breaking the law. Stop violating the Constitution. If Trump does that, then he won't see the suits. And he won't see the preliminary injunctions and the temporary restraining orders issued against him. But we will continue to go to court to make sure that the law is complied with and followed. Crowds are really important. The most raw, powerful form of democracy and democratic participation, a reminder that we are a country of, for, and by the people, that the people have the first and the last word, that people power is the most potent power that there is, and that the next chapter to be written in the story of California and in this country will be written by you and me and us, the people. The bosses of Mr. Trump are not his billionaire buddies. or greedy corporations. They are us, the people. So we need to stay involved, especially when there's these mass no kings or hands-off rallies. Show up, speak out. I know you will. I'm speaking to the choir, but it's important. Encourage your friends, encourage others to participate as well. Finally, courage is important. Part of the federal administration's efforts here is to silence and intimidate and force people, bully people into submission. Do not be bullied into submission. Do not capitulate. Continue to fight and speak up and speak out. We've seen folks who've had their rights violated, and they've allowed their rights to be trampled on. If rights are violated, they must be vindicated. You go to court, you fight back, you push back, you make sure that the Constitution is complied with, that the law is followed. So it's important that we continue to have courage, the courage of our convictions, the courage of our actions to speak up and speak out. Part of that is reminding ourselves that we are not alone, that we are in this fight together. I'm proud to fight with my colleagues at the county level, on the community level, at the state level, at the federal level, for our common values of progress in California, and making sure that we treat people consistent with the law, that we uphold our democracy, that we protect rights and freedoms. I'm all in on that. No backing down, uncompromising. I know you are too. So hang in there, keep pushing, keep fighting. I'll fight with you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for that. And again, there are resources on your website. Each of us can connect you with resources in our local communities. It is unfortunately the two congressional members could not join us this morning, but if you need questions answered, obviously a lot of these are federal issues, and they have been incredible partners. And talking about big crowds, we have had over 1,000 people join us this morning. We just sent this information out yesterday afternoon. So I think that should really warm everybody's heart, that we are all in this together, all in this, making sure that our communities stay safe. And again, thank you to all of our speakers, and thank you to everybody that took some time out of their morning to be a little bit more informed. And have a good rest of the day.